Today we're going to talk about doing this second part of an intake. And just remember, when you first start the session, you want to make some small talk. And then you want to ask your client, what are you feeling about doing the intake with me today? And just let them express their feelings. And then you want to say, well, let's start with a prayer. Your first prayer is inviting the Holy Spirit into the session. And then you can begin with page 4 of the intake. It talks about their marital status. And you need to remember that a lot of people have been married more than once. And there's not enough room on this intake to talk about that. So you need to turn on the back and write down every ex-husband's name. And if they've been divorced, it's an automatic star by the name. It's an automatic source of trauma. So go through all the marriages. You don't want a whole lot of detail because you already know you're going to be processing those people. But just get them to tell you a little bit about that relationship, how long it lasted, and why it ended. That would be the two things I would want to know the most. Then if they have children, go ahead and write down the kids, their names and their ages and their health. Sometimes I'll just say, tell me a little bit about Braden. And I'll just write down things that she says about her child. This half of the intake takes twice as long to do as the first half because we're going to be digging deep about past relationships. So you don't want to linger on any one person very long at all. The minute you realize that person needs to be processed, put a star by it and try to transition to the next part of the intake. Let them know, okay, now we're going to talk about your family of origin, and we're going to start with your birth father. And so you're going to ask these questions and write down your answers, their answers. I think the most important question that we ask about their parents is give me 3 strengths and 3 weaknesses. Most people are like, oh man, that's hard. Say, yeah, it is hard. Empathize with them on that. Those strengths and weaknesses can help you put together a customized plan. A lot of people think, oh, my dad, he was just wonderful. He did no wrong in my eyes. And then you ask strengths and weaknesses, and they say, well, he had a bad temper, and he yelled a lot, and he was very non-available emotionally. But he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, So it's kind of contradictory. If their weaknesses reveal that there could be some trauma there, put a big star by Dad, even though she thinks he hung the moon. Then also go on to page 5. We're going to talk about Mom now. Now I want to ask you about your siblings. And then just go through this just like it's written. Now tell me if there are any other family members who have compromised your values, your expectations, and caused you pain and loss. Like grandparents, for example. Any of your grandparents cause you pain and loss? How about your aunts, uncles, cousins? And just dig a little deep and take notes, of course. And you also want to talk about relationships at this point. At the bottom of page 5, it doesn't give you much room, but let's go to the back and let's put stars by the relationships that need to be processed. Backing up a little bit, if they've had 2 or 3 or 4 dads, stepfathers, you want to know the age of your client for each of those dads. How long was he your stepfather? From age 5 to 12, and then your mom remarried when you were 13, and that one lasted till 18. So you want to know the seasons of those stepfathers or stepmothers. And of course, I usually ask strengths and weaknesses about all of those. Depending on my time, I want to finish this intake today. So you're going to have to move it along. On the last page, you do want to ask the question at the top about any circumstances as being sources of trauma. And then that second question, I do want to alter it a little bit. Instead of asking them what the most traumatic experience they've ever been through is, that's kind of an overwhelming question. I think it's a lot easier on your client if you ask them to tell me about 3 things in your life that have really been a source of trauma for you, and see what they say. I think it's a lot easier to answer. And then tell them these last questions are going to be very personal. And again, I just want to remind you, this is a safe place. Nothing you tell me today will leave this session. This is between me, you, and God. It's a good time to remind them before you ask these last few questions. Just get their first names. Tell them you probably already told me about these people, but go ahead and give me their first name again. And you're going to write the first names according to the questions. And then when it's over, you're going to really encourage them and thank them for their vulnerability and tell them how good they did. You can tell them that all along the way, just encouraging them for their honesty with you, because the more honest they are, the more you can help them. Also, they may think of something after the intake is over and just felt so much pressure, couldn't remember some things. So let them know that next week they can tell you more if there is more to tell. And don't forget to end each session asking how you can specifically pray for your client this week. Sometimes I'll say, do you have anything coming up this week that you would like me to pray for you about? And again, take notes on what they ask for prayer for, because next week you want to start the session asking about those prayer requests and if God answered those prayers or how that person is doing. So every session should kind of flow into the next session. You want to also tell them at the end of the intake what you'll be doing next week is 3 things. Number 1, you're going to be reviewing chapter 1 in the Break Every Stinking Chain book. So encourage them to read chapter 1. Secondly, you're going to be talking about the customized plan for their healing. And third, you are going to train them on how to do stage 1 of the process. And this is assuming, of course, that they're ready to go forward. If you don't feel they're emotionally stable enough to go forward, then the next week is strictly phase 1 in chapter 1. And you can spend the whole hour on chapter 1. That's going to be it for today. Next time we do a video, I'm going to talk to you about how to make a customized healing plan for your client. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.